that just proves that in the Bible there's no such thing as retirement. Amen? As long as you draw breath, church, you are called. As long as you wake up and see the right side of the grass, there's a calling on your life. As long as you wake up and put the forked end down, you can serve God. Amen? That's exciting, isn't it? So I have a question for you, church. Who do you think you are? Now, maybe that statement, that question brought back a memory of when a parent was looking you dead in the face after you just said something stupid, right? And anybody ever hear that? Or is it just me up here testifying? No one else has had that moment of, yeah. You know, when a parent says that, when they ask you that question, they're giving you an opportunity to rethink and pivot and change whatever stupid thing you just said. But who do you think you are? What authority do you think you have? Authority is on my mind today, church. As we continue our series in Exodus, the road construction series, we are looking at how God makes the road out of Egypt, the road through the wilderness, and the road in to the promised land. And we are thinking about road construction because that's what Exodus really is. It is a road, a pathway that God makes for the people to bring them to the fullness of salvation by his covenant promise. And then because it's summertime and road construction is everywhere, why not pair it with what's making us most annoyed in our summer travels? Amen? But not long ago, I was stuck in one of those, you know what I'm talking about, never-ending construction zones, right? Where you can't see where the work begins or ends, or maybe in between, right? Just miles and miles of cones, dust, and delay, right? At the center of it all stood a person. He wore a bright orange vest, dark sunglasses, and he held out a large handheld sign that said, "Stop," or "Slow" on the other. No crew around him. No equipment in motion. Just him. Planting his feet in the middle of traffic, parting the traffic like he was Moses. And the thing is, he really looked like he was in charge. He held that sign not like a tool, but a scepter. You guys feel me? You know what I'm saying. His posture, his pace, the way he ignored impatient drivers, it was clear in his mind he wasn't just doing traffic control, he was traffic control. And because he believed it so confidently, led so flawlessly, we all got in line, right? And that struck me. It strikes me because how a perception can shape a reality, church. At least maybe for a moment, but maybe for a lifetime. If we're not careful, how we see ourselves matters. How we see ourselves shapes, informs, directs how we live our lives and interact with the people around us. And I think about that as we study Pharaoh this morning in the great ConFrontation. That's Pharaoh. In Exodus 5 and 7, he's not just sitting on the throne. He believes he built the throne. He's not just holding the reins of an empire. He thinks that he holds the keys to heaven and earth. He sees himself not as a servant of a higher power, but as the highest power. And for a while, people believe it. His delusion drives policy. It shapes how he treats others, and it even determines who lives and who dies. But Pharaoh, unlike our sign holder, is the head cheese of his nation. But in his authority, he got swept up, thinking somehow, some way, he was divinity. He is standing on ground he did not make, holding authority that does not ultimately belong to him, and he can wave the stop sign all he wants. But the problem is when the real boss shows up. Church, you ever have that in your life where there's a coworker that they were left temporarily in charge and they ruled over you, and then all of a sudden the real boss came back? And how much changed when the real authority was present in the room? When the sovereign God of Israel steps up onto the site, all of a sudden, this reality that Pharaoh has encased himself in begins to crack. Who does Pharaoh think he is? The great confrontation is coming. Pharaoh's illusion of power is about to collide with the one who is power. And the question then and now is simple. Who's the boss? Which was a great TV show, by the way. The guy holding the sign, or the God who laid the foundations of the earth? Now, in previous chapters, Moses and Aaron have received this direction from God. Go to the people, tell them what I'm going to do. Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, is going to bring them out. He is here, he's present, he's heard their cries. You go and tell the people, I am working on their behalf. And so Moses and Aaron are sent by God to Pharaoh, and they address Pharaoh. But before they go to Pharaoh, they go to the actual Israelite people themselves to say, listen, God's doing this on your behalf. And the Israelites are thrilled. They're excited. But it's in chapters 5 that things begin to go sideways. And they go sideways pretty quick, right? Moses delivers the command from God to Pharaoh, let my people go. Let my people go. It's not a suggestion, but a command from the sovereign Lord. The Lord, in classic messenger style, does not seek to negotiate or establish a political relationship. He is not trying to make a deal, but rather he has Moses and Aaron roll up into Pharaoh's court, and he says, you will yield to me or else. Now, to those of us who've read the story and we know what he's talking about, we're like, oh yeah, boom, there it is. But imagine Pharaoh. Think about it. Someone comes into your home, stands in your foyer, and says, this is what you're going to do. How are you going to receive that, church? It's so easy to pick on Pharaoh, isn't it? It's so easy to see Pharaoh as other, but we can probably relate to Pharaoh a lot more deeply than we care to realize. Someone comes into our house, tells us what we're going to do, like they own the place. You will yield or else. Oh yeah, you will go or else. You'll have an opportunity to be free of my presence outside those doors. In the words of my dear wise father, don't let the door hit you where the good Lord split you. Get out. Get out. How can we not empathize with Pharaoh? Right? How can we not empathize with Pharaoh's response? Pharaoh's on the throne of Egypt. Are you on the throne of your life? Is God commanding Pharaoh to do something crazy, like yield authority? And does God need to give that command to you? To authority. God comes in and he declares, this is what you're going to do. Thus, in this moment, God is telling Pharaoh, you have no claim over my people. Church, hear this. This is going to hit hard. God rolls up and says, you have no claim over my people. You do not get their worship. You do not get their service. They are mine. They belong to me. It says in Exodus 20 that God is a jealous God. Now, that's not jealousy that we understand in our world today. We understand jealousy through a way of envy, right? Where someone else has something that we don't have or we never had, and we're like, oh, I would love that. It's me every time I see a gorgeous Mustang GT. I'm like, oh yeah, I would like to have that. But I've never had. But here's the deal, church. God's jealousy is not envy. You see, God is upset that something's being taken away from him that's rightfully his. It's what he deserves. It's what he has. And someone else is reaping. God is a jealous God. God has rolled up to Pharaoh's courtroom, and he's going to tell him, this is what's what. We understand God because God is a jealous God. The Israelites are his own treasured possession, and their worship belongs exclusively to Yahweh. Therefore, Pharaoh must relinquish all claims over the Israelite people. He must submit to God. Who do you think you are, church? But Pharaoh's response is interesting. Pharaoh responds, who is the Lord that I should obey him? Pharaoh sees himself not as subservient to God, but as over God. He is greater than God. And it's interesting that he asks the question, who is God? He pretty much is saying to Moses and Aaron, I've never even heard his name. I don't know him. He must be a nobody. He must be a nobody. It makes me think of that TV show Undercover Boss, right? Undercover Boss, where the boss is kind of, secretly working in amongst the common folks, right? And no one really knows him or her. And all of a sudden, there's the great reveal at the end of the show. And then all of a sudden, heads are going to roll or someone's going to be celebrated, right? But here it is. Here it is. This Pharaoh doesn't think that God is God. That he is not who he says he is. In fact, he's a false God. There's no authority here. There's no real authority, because if there was real authority, he would know about it. Pharaoh would know this God's name. Pharaoh, the God of Egypt, responds as we might expect. The sovereign God of Egypt will not submit to the God of the slaves, the God of the powerless, the God of the voiceless, the God of the abused. No one gives him orders, and he does not acknowledge any claim by any deity claimed by a people he owns. Pharaoh sees only himself as the final authority. Pharaoh insists on Yahweh yielding to him. Who does he think he is? Now, Pharaoh, it's really important that we note this. Pharaoh is a real character in history engaged in a real event. Archaeological discoveries affirm many of the named actions described in the Bible in Exodus. Bricks made with straw, ancient Hebrew relics found in northern Egypt in the land of Goshen, religious festivals honoring deities, and work quotas for slaves all give credence to there is an actual thing, an event that took place in real time, in real history. That's important, because that means this is not some romanticized story, but there's power behind it. Because Pharaoh is not some antagonist. though Pharaoh is the archetype of the state of humanity. Think about it, church. Think about who Pharaoh is and what he represents. And tell me if you don't hear Genesis 3 in your heads. Pharaoh's heart reflects the human heart in rebellion against God's authority. We reach back and we hear the words, did God really say? They're not much different from the contrast of Pharaoh's, I don't know your God. Pharaoh does not only rebel against God, but holds contempt against God. As we look to who we are in the story, it's so easy, church, for us to identify ourselves with the ones who are the heroes. But how often are we the one in need of being dethroned? How often are we the ones in need of a humility lesson? How often are we the ones who refuse to yield when confronted with the God of the universe? Many today in the church and in the world still ask, who is the Lord that I should obey him? Why should I uproot my life? Why should I do anything different? Why should I even recognize why there should be an influence? Who is God that I should be changed? But here's the truth, church. God's authority is not up for debate. You see, God rolls up to Pharaoh. He's not going to shy. He's not going to back away. He's like, this is how it is. Truth bomb, like it or leave it. It's still the way it is. It's like me having a conversation with my parents when they reminded me, as long as you live in my house, you will obey my rules. I know it's hard to believe that my parents would say that to me. This is God's house, church. This is God's creation. It's like when Job says, hey, God, where are you? You should give an account to me. God's response is not like, oh, okay, let me make you feel better. It's, where were you when I laid the foundations of the earth? Where were you when I told the oceans to only come this far? Who do you think you are? The God of the universe is calling us out as he calls out Pharaoh. And then there's a crisis. There's a crisis. The result of Moses and Aaron and their actions are not fruitful for the Israelites. In fact, a negative result is incurred. Pharaoh blames Moses and Aaron as intent on slowing down or stopping Egypt's economy, thus weakening his empire and his reign. All of a sudden, this God who wants to take away these people is a threat. Now, we just went from, I don't know who this God is, to, who do you think you are? And contempt comes at it. Pharaoh increases Israel's oppression, so his power seems secure. But this moment, church, reveals a critical truth. You might want to write this down. Power without righteousness is tyranny. Power without righteousness is tyranny. Pharaoh accuses Moses and Aaron of spreading lies. Pharaoh is seeking to undermine and derail God's purpose in favor of himself. False gods offer power, but not peace. False gods offer power, but not peace. What are the false gods that seem powerful today, church? They don't have temples or altars, but they demand our loyalty just the same. Success, control, wealth, political power, personal identity, celebrity status. These are the forces that promise meaning, power, and security, but cannot deliver peace. peace, to be able to walk in security and love of God, knowing that your future is safe and secure. These things of this world cannot offer you that relationship. One of the clearest examples is commerce itself. Now, I wasn't alive for this. I just want you to understand that. So I read what I'm about to tell you through a history book. For some of you, that may feel like an ouch, but trust me when I tell you, it'll be worth it. In the past generations, businesses often paused to make space for religious observance. Stores closed on Sundays. Schools honored sacred holidays. Time was made for worship. But today, commerce is king. The economy doesn't stop for anything sacred. Religious conviction must now fit in the margins, if at all. And behind that commercial engine are the modern pharaohs. Those who control production, labor, and wealth. Think about how products are made, church. Look at the tags in your clothing and on your stuff. Those who control production, labor, and wealth, think about how the products are made in countries like China, Vietnam, Malaysia, the regions of Africa and South America where workers are paid pennies on the dollar, labor in unsafe conditions, and have no voice or value. Many of the companies that we rely on exploit these systems to keep prices low and profits high. Human rights abuses, child labor, and forced silence are often all part of the deal. These powerful systems and people act like gods. They set the rules. They decide what a life is worth. And they crush those who get in the way. Like Pharaoh, they believe that they are the center of the story. They are untouchable. They are the ultimate authority. But just like in Exodus, there is a confrontation coming. Because there is only one true God. And he sees the bricks. And he hears the cries. And he will respond. Moses and Aaron, though, also in their faithfulness of delivering the message of God, find themselves in a very dejected state. They find themselves set against their own people and against the very Pharaoh they were called to address. Because Pharaoh's response to increase the oppression, to make things harder, has caused the Israelites to run back and to forget or to wish it never happened. When they heard about God's freedom, but it didn't work out the way they thought it should. Moses and Aaron are dejected and they complain to God, "Why did you send us here? Why did you get involved? Things are only worse now that you are at war." There was supposed to be a great positive movement, but instead there came hardship, violence, and oppression. And church, that's what happens because human hubris is often at odds with God's plan. What we see as a common sense approach is not how God approaches. Just because we are working toward God's justice and values does not mean that things are going to go well for us. I know despite what all the televangelists say, despite all the false promises made by the feel-good preachers, when you begin to take up the banner of God's word and you begin to speak out for the sake of the gospel, things are probably not going to go well for you. And you may feel dejected and depressed. Let me give you a real-world example. In the early 1990s, I was alive for this. As tensions rose in Rwanda between the Hutu and the Tutsi tribes, Christian leaders both local and international, warned of coming violence. They pleaded with the government and to the UN to intervene, to pursue peace, and to prevent bloodshed, to do what was righteous. But like Pharaoh in the Exodus, the authorities hardened their hearts. The Rwandan government rejected the calls for reconciliation, and the UN even withdrew peacekeepers when they were most needed. Sierra, you could probably teach this lesson. And when the genocide broke out in 94, that's 1994, by the way, over 800,000. Think about that. 800,000 people were murdered in just 100 days. Many inside the very church buildings they sought refuge in. Christian voices had spoken truth to power, but power refused to listen. And the cost was catastrophic. Like Moses, many Christian leaders cried to God, wondering why this took place. Why did this happen? They were supposed to respond. But just because the people speak the righteous words of God doesn't mean that people respond in a righteous way. When sin and evil are in the world, people are faced with a choice. God is not the author of violence or injustice and evil, but humanity is fully capable of it on its own. And with the enemy of God at work in the world, he seeks to perfect the human capacity for evil. Because whenever you are confronted with God, you have a choice to make. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says it best. He says this: when Christ calls a man, he bids him to come and to die. What this means is this: we either die to ourselves and follow God, or we reject and kill Christ by choosing our own way over his. We cannot despair over what does not go the way we believe it should, but we rather ask ourselves, are we being obedient? Job cries out to God to vindicate his suffering, to say, where are you, God? Why are you acting this way? But God's response, like I said earlier, is not one where he pleads his case. It's a response as, who do you think you are? Now, in the face of Moses' and Aaron's complaint, God gives an amazing gift. You know it, church? It's a great gift. God reaffirms his covenant name. I am the Lord. He says, I am Yahweh. He tells Moses, I'm going to be who I will be despite the circumstances. Despite the negative backlash, God reaffirms his promise to Moses. This is going to take place. So even in the midst, the aftermath of the violence, of the disruption, of the despair, of the heartache, God says, I am still God. God promises to act. He says, I will bring you out, I will deliver you, I will redeem you, and I will take you as my own people. God reinstitutes, reaffirms the claim that he has on those who are his chosen ones. Moses is discouraged, but God reminds him, it's not about your ability, it's about my sovereignty. God uses weak vessels, church, to confront powerful lies. There are so many stories in church history where monks from the poorest areas of their countries travel to speak to leadership, to speak in sandals and tattered clothes, to say, listen, there is a God of the universe, and you will answer to him. you will give an account. God turns Aaron into a mouthpiece and Moses into a sign. He tells them Pharaoh's heart will be hard so that God may multiply his signs and wonders. Now, we're going to get into that next week a lot more. But God says to Moses and Aaron, you just wait. I'm going to give you an opportunity to see what I'm capable of. You think you can do something. You just wait till I get involved. It's like, I loved coaching Pee Wee baseball. They don't call it Pee Wee baseball anymore. I forget what it's called now. I loved coaching Pee Wee baseball. But it's like taking a Pee Wee baseball team to the major leagues, right? And they're playing the Yankees. The game's not going to go well for somebody. Not this season, Deb. Not this season. You should have a towel back there to cry. So it's not going to go well for those Pee-wees. When the God of the universe gets in the ring, the fight's over. I like watching the two people, whether it's MMA or boxers, after they weigh in, and they just stand and like face one another. You know, they're like, and you're like the buildup of, oh, I'm going to own you, and the other one's like, I'm going to own you, and one of them is only going to win. The other one will lose, period. And when you're standing facing God, you lose. When you are on the wrong side of God, you lose, period. The world will learn that lesson one of these days, church. God is not one of many gods. He is the only God. This is not just a political conflict. It is a spiritual warfare. God is making his name known through his people, Israel, and now his people, the church. Just as Yahweh confronted Pharaoh, Jesus confronted and disarmed the spiritual rulers and authorities of the world. Colossians 2:15 says this, he disarmed the rulers and authorities and put them to open shame by triumphing over them. On the cross, Jesus defeated sin and death and every other false god of this age because he is who he says he is. When Jesus declared, before Abraham was, I am. Jesus declared with confidence and certainty that there was no pulling something over him. He was in complete control and complete power at all times. Jesus wins. 1 John 5:21 says this, little children, keep yourselves from idols. Don't enthrone. Church, listen to me. Get this clear. Do not enthrone what God has already dethroned. Do not put in your life the authority of something of this world when God is supposed to be there. The things of this world bring a lot of promises. You go on this vacation and you'll have the best time ever. But then as soon as you get back from that vacation, what do they try to do? If you sign up today, we'll give you, right? Wait, I thought that was a once-in-a-lifetime vacation. Well, it was now, but now it can be twice. Right? For just a few dollars, you can reserve your spot for next year. Right? Just a small snippet, right? Wear this piece of clothing. Buy this brand. Eat this food. Do this thing. Work this job. And life will be great. But what is the number one result of each and every one of those things? Disappointment and heartache. I have done, church counted, I have done hundreds of funerals over my career. And I have never met a person who said, if only I could have worked more. If only I could have traveled more. If only I could have had more